Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Mordian Glory video. In today's episode I want to do some musings on the meta, take you through a particular trend that I have noticed, an observation I have made whilst I've been hitting the tournament scene hard. If you don't know, I've actually been to a lot of tournaments in the last few months. At times I've been to more than one tournament in a week, and many of these escapades have been covered in after action reports on this channel. Whenever I've gone to a tournament, I've always tried to take one of two kind of lists. Either I've taken a bit of a funny meme list, a bit of a skew, maybe I've turned up with some super heavies, or maybe I've turned up with pure infantry, and these are some of my favorite lists because you sort of take a concept and you push it to its extreme. You're like, how far can this really go, and will it completely fall flat on its face, or is there actually some merit to the theory that this thing is based on? Or I like to take a quite well balanced list, a little bit of tanks, a bit of infantry, a bit of artillery, really focus on those things which make the guard great, which is numbers and firepower. But regardless of whether I'm memeing it or taking it seriously, I've always made sure that my armies have got the fundamentals covered. I make sure I've got a little bit of infantry to play the objective game. I've got some guys that can deep strike down to do some secondaries, and if I haven't got tanks, I make sure that my firepower is coming from other sources. And I just thought this was the normal way to build lists. You make sure that you cover as many eventualities as possible. You can't plan for everything, but as long as you've got the basics nailed down, you should be able to handle most threats that come along. And even if you lose, you should still be able to score some decent points. So at the end of the event, you're able to end up with a pretty good placing. And for the most part, by following these principles, I've been able to get a fairly respectable performance out of the guard on the tabletop, even if the faction as a whole has not been in the best place. Now, this is not a video espousing the virtues of my list building practice. I'm not just going to sit here wanking myself off for a number of minutes. I mean, I can do, but don't think YouTube would approve, and then it really doesn't give me much material for the OnlyFans, the Mordian Glory hole. No, the reason that I'm mentioning this is because I've noticed that this is no longer the norm with a lot of 40k armies. A lot of players are going into tournaments, and it feels like a lot of armies are now fundamentally basing their competitive tactics off being a bit skewed, or a lot of players are going in with a more skewed army. This is different from what we've had in the past. There's always been an element of min-maxing when the game forced you to take certain types of units, like a minimum of 2 troops and an HQ choice, or under 10th edition that would be 2 battle line and a character. People would take bare minimum, but it seems now that even more so than before, this is becoming the norm rather than the exception. And I would say that the majority of tournament armies that I've faced off against have been heavily skewed, or have lacked what I would see as just fundamentals, things that every army should include. But the one thing that I have noticed has really started to take a back seat, and the main point of this video, I know I've been talking for several minutes already, only just getting to the point, classic Mordian Glory content, just get on with it. The main thing I've seen that really has begun to drop off is people taking things like what we would call troops or battle line. Essentially, people seem to be sacrificing their objective control to squeeze more goodies into the list. To give you a few examples from the last tournament that I went to at the time of recording this video, the first army that I went up against was Death Guard, and the only battle line objective control in the army was 30 Poxwalkers, 1 squad of 20, 1 squad of 10. The next army I went up against was Tyranids, and the only objective control in that army was 30 Gargoyles. And those Gargoyles were actually used really for screening more than anything else. They just pushed forward and essentially move blocked me for a turn. So after turn 1, there really wasn't any objective control really on the board because I just obviously cleared that out as quickly as I could. And then the third game, I went up against the Leagues of Votann. And they had all sorts of Dwarven Terminators and Exosuit Armor guys, and there were Sagittars buzzing all over the place. But in terms of good objective control, there was only 20 Hearthkin Warriors. That was it. In contrast to that, the army I was running would be what I would call a completely typical, normal hybrid guard force. I had 4 tanks, I had 3 artillery pieces, 1 basilisk, a couple of mortar teams, and then I had 4 blobs of infantry. That was it. Nothing wild, nothing skewed about that at all. Solid infantry core, backed up by some tanks, seasoned with a smidge of artillery. But in one of my squads, I could have more objective control than other people would have in all of their other battle line stuff. Take a look at that first army, 30 Poxwalkers, that's 60 OC. Well, I can tell one of my infantry blobs to duty and honor, use that order, get 1 extra OC on that unit, and now one of my 20-man squads is outdoing your 30 objective control guys. And I've still got 60 more of my own guys backing that up. Same again with the gargoyles, and then just 1 blob, even without duty and honor, is outdoing the Votann OC because they had about 40 OC over their 20 Hearthkin. I've got 40 in unit. But please don't think that I am lambasting or slagging off my opponents in any way, shape or form. All of them were lovely people that played really strong games. I've not had an easy game of 10th edition. I've not had a bad game of 10th edition on the tournament scene yet. And it's the done thing, it seems to be. These people are doing what seems to be what everyone is doing. If I look back at other tournaments, it's the same stuff. I don't think I've faced a Marine army this edition which has had more than a cursory amount of infantry. A lot of Marine armies I come up against have maybe got a couple of squads of, it's either incursors or infiltrators, I'm not entirely certain. It's the ones with the paired blades and like the normal looking bolters. And everything else has been like tanks and dreadnoughts. So I've had repulsors come at me, gladiators come at me, lancers come at me. It's probably gladiator lancer is probably the same thing, isn't it? But I've had ballistas dreadnoughts and I've had redemptors. It's been vehicles, firepower, vehicles, firepower, vehicles, firepower, and then I might as well chuck in 5 infiltrators for the sake of it. I acknowledge that this could be a phenomenon localized to my meta, but I don't think that is the case. I've been traveling a fair bit for the events, and I've been to all sorts of venues and metas, and every event has been under pretty much a different TO. And no matter where I've been and which game stores I've been to, it seems to be a similar trend. Chaos Demons focusing on Monster Mash, Marines focusing on tanks, other armies really just focusing on the damage dealers, objective control battle line really just barely featuring prominently at all. And I think the reason for this happening is the way that lists are now built in 10th edition. There's no more force organization chart that forces you to take an HQ and 2 troop choices. There's no more detachments that give you bonuses for taking certain types of units, so you don't get your battalion detachment like an 8th edition that gave you more command points. All of that's really kind of gone away now, and instead I think the only requirement that you have for an army is you must take a character. Apart from that, you don't need to summon any battle line. You can take all of the coolest and biggest and baddest units in your collection. And most people are doing this. They're putting their infantry on the shelves and they're taking the more exciting units. And why wouldn't you? Why would you take intercessors when you could take hellblasters, or you could take aggressors and attach a character onto them and suddenly they're mowing down everything before them? Well, at least on paper anyway. And that just covers the people that were already in the hobby, that have adapted from 8th and 9th into 10th edition. You've then got the people that are joining for the first time who don't know any different, who just go, well, I need a character, and then I can just take whatever I want, and they can just browse the website, or they can browse the shelves of their local hobby store, and if they just see something that catches their eye, they can buy it, they can build it, paint it, and they can put it on the battlefield without having to worry about really any constraints outside of things like the rule of 3. So from an accessibility point of view, it's a really, really good thing that GW has done here, because it means people can now finally, more so than ever before, just get the models that they want, throw them onto the field, and have a good time with them. But, and it is a big but, and I cannot lie, I think that from a competitive point of view, from a gameplay point of view, for a lot of players, it's a big mistake. I think it's a trap that so many people are falling into right now. Maybe it's just because I'm an old longbeard who still grumbles about force org charts and platoon structures, and you need to have the infantry corps. It always comes down to the infantry models rifle. Yeah, I know what I sound like, guys, but putting that aside for a moment, I think that it's a big mistake. In my experience, especially of 10th edition, but even in previous editions like 8th and 9th, whenever things have been a bit squiffy for the Guard, either as a whole in the meta or in a very particular game, the one thing that I've always been able to fall back on, and often what has made the difference between victory and defeat, has been my ability to hold objectives. Has been my ability to, even if I've lost all of my tanks, my artillery's being tied up, everything is just going sideways, to have guardsmen, have battle line, to have objective control or objective secure, whatever function and mechanic it was called, to have that pushing on to the objectives and locking them down and holding them, that has often turned the game around for me. It's often meant that I've been able to play for a later game victory, maybe turn 3, turn 4, turn 5, where maybe at first I've been getting absolutely hammered in the firefight, maybe been getting hammered in close combat, but because I've been able to just hold on, secure that territory, those points have started flowing in and have started racking up. In fact, I would go so far as to say that some of the recent victories that I've been able to enjoy have been almost entirely down to me having significantly more objective control, to having significantly more battle line than my opponents. Because I've had some truly horrendous starts to games. I've had entire Guard gun lines open up turn 1, turn 2 and not kill an enemy model. But the game has turned around because I've been able to really just get those secondary points in, get those primary points locked down, and by me dominating on primary, not only am I scoring more, but I'm also denying those points to my opponent. I had a recent matchup against, I believe it was Votan, where over the course of the game, my opponent scored 6 primary points. He held his home objective turn 2, turn 3, turn 4, and it was only worth 2 points of time. Meanwhile, I maxed out my primary objectives. Even if my opponent did really, really well on secondaries, there's no way of turning that around. That's such a difference. Because the Votan chap, he had a good list. He had 20 of those Terminators. He had those Grav Cannon Exosuit guys. He had all the stuff that makes a fantastic Votan army. But he just couldn't play the objective game. I just marched 40 infantry onto each objective, and he never got near them. Even with his firepower, by me using clever terrain use and stuff like that, he never got to use his firepower the way he wanted to, and he didn't have objective control domination fall back on as a tactic. And this is where I think people are going wrong. I think where people are losing sight of how to actually win a game of 40k. Because sure, you can kill and kill and kill, but I've been in situations where I've lost 95% of my army and still won on points. Because there are very few points that you get for killing enemy units. I think there's 4 secondary objectives that give you points for killing. I might be missing one. There's overwhelming force, no prisoners, bring it down, and assassinate. Roughly, out of the 16 objectives, bear in mind, like I said, I might have missed one. That's about 25% of the secondary cards that are focused on killing. And the other 75% are about holding objectives like secure no man's land or extend battle lines, or about being all over the place, like behind enemy lines, or deploy teleporter Homer, or engage in all fronts. Basically, what I'm saying is that overwhelming firepower or close combat capabilities, overwhelming damage output, I should say, is a very alluring mistress. It feels good when you're rolling the dice and your opponent's picking up the models, and probably 50% of the time, it'll get you a victory. I mean, at the end of the day, if your opponent's got no models left, then they have no way of scoring points, right? But I think that it's quite a one-dimensional tactic, and I think that relying upon it too heavily, unless your army is massively overtuned, top tier, something like Eldar, where they can do all the scoring and all the maneuverability and everything in one go. Unless you are one of those top tier armies, if you're more down the middle, like a lot of factions are, relying heavily on it means that you've only got one string to your bow. And if you come across someone who has more firepower than you, or has the ability to endure that firepower and keep on scoring, we have not got much to fall back on. At the end of the day, 40k is a game of standing on circles, and whoever can stand on the circles the longest or the best tends to win the game. And right now, I think a lot of people are not doing that. And I think the majority of lists that I go up against focus on elite damage dealing potential rather than looking at the, I would argue, much more important, although a lot less jazzy, defensive stat lines and objective control capabilities. But of course, all of this is just like my opinion, man. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Do you find yourself building lists with less and less objective control so you can fit in more and more firepower? And are you finding that lack of objective control a problem? Or have you been winning games precisely because you've been making sure that you've got plenty of OC in your army list? If you've enjoyed today's video, then make sure you smash that like button and don't forget to subscribe to never miss an episode. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian glory hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing, truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full-time without the incredible and generous support of my members, so thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, and they have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a big shout out to Bon Bon Vert, Mad Larkin, Marcus Roberts, Mark Panconi, RJ Scorpion, Swordfish Trombone, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, and August Varney. Thank you guys so much. Your incredible generosity is a massive part of how I'm able to do Mordian Glory full time, and it is a big driving force behind the channel. But I hope you all enjoyed today's video. Thank you for watching, and of course, as always, I'll see you guys next time.